Most financial decisions are not made rationally. They are driven by emotions, memories, and the stories people have believed about themselves for years. There's a strange paradox in modern life. People have access to countless financial insights, read hundreds of tips on saving, investing, and spending wisely, yet the feeling of financial insecurity barely diminishes. On the contrary, it becomes more subtle, more silent, and harder to name. Money is no longer just a medium of exchange. It becomes a vessel for shame, comparison, anxiety, and self-judgment. The book Good with Money by Emma Edwards begins precisely at this paradoxical point. It doesn't open with the question of how to get richer. It starts with a less comfortable truth. Many people don't lack the ability to earn money but lack a healthy relationship with it. When that relationship is distorted, every decision becomes heavy. Each time you spend, it's a struggle. Each time you look at your account, it's self-reproach. And every financial plan, no matter how carefully crafted, easily collapses the moment emotions speak. Edwards doesn't view money as a technical problem. She sees it as a psychological and social phenomenon. From consumer norms instilled early on to how social media amplifies comparison, from personalized advertising to spending methods that blur the sense of cost, all these create an environment where being not good with money is almost the default state. In this context, this book doesn't scold readers for their failures. It poses a different question. Is it fair to demand perfect money management from people when the entire system around them is designed to make them spend more, faster, and with less thought? What makes Good with Money different isn't what it promises, but what it refuses. It rejects the role of a financial morality textbook. It doesn't categorize readers as diligent or lazy, disciplined or reckless. Instead, it looks directly at how money has become intertwined with identity, self-worth, and emotions. When money becomes the measure of sufficiency, every small deficit is felt as a personal failure. And when money is used to soothe emotional voids, it is never enough because money itself was not designed for that purpose. This book also redefines the role of control. Control is often lauded as the ultimate solution, but control driven by fear only creates a new loop. The more afraid you are of making mistakes, the tighter you grip, the easier it is to snap back when tired. Good with Money offers a different path, less noisy but more sustainable. Instead of controlling money, learn to engage with your financial life. Engage regularly, without judgment, without avoidance, and without using shame as a motivator. At a deeper level, this book isn't about money itself, but about the power of choice. The power of choice erodes when every decision is a reflex to social pressure, fleeting emotions, or old beliefs that have never been re-examined. When the power of choice is reclaimed, money begins to move away from being the center of stress and returns to its original role: a tool to serve life, not something that defines human worth. And from here, an issue opens up, not easy to answer but difficult to ignore. If money is neither the enemy nor the savior, what ultimate position does it hold in life? How many decisions are made because they truly fit, and how many are merely reactions to feelings of scarcity, fear of falling behind, or the desire for recognition? If money were temporarily detached from these roles, would life feel lighter or emptier? And most importantly, would people dare to look directly at their relationship with money, not to fix it immediately, but to understand it first? No one grows up wanting to avoid money. No one wakes up one day and decides they'll be afraid to look at their bank account, that they'll make promises and break them, or always feel a few steps behind others. What happens, much slower and more subtly, is a creeping sense of shame entering daily life. Shame for not being in control. Shame for spending more than intended. Shame for always thinking that if only they were a little more disciplined, a little smarter, things would be different. But the biggest blind spot of money isn't in the numbers. It's in how people are taught to see themselves. From a very early age, attention is pulled away from money and directed towards other things. The body must be fixed, appearance improved. The self always needs a better version. Diet and beauty culture don't just sell products. They sell the idea that something is wrong with us, and that idea is extremely profitable. While we can rattle off calorie counts, fat-burning creams, and weight loss teas, our bank accounts remain hazy. Not because of a lack of intellect, but because cognitive energy has been hijacked elsewhere. Insecurity becomes a consumer driver. Every penny spent is a silent effort to fix an imagined flaw. Then norms appear, and they are never static. Norms are always impossible to achieve because if they were achievable, the market would collapse. The standard woman, the standard of success, the standard of maturity, the standard of living at the right age. Women's financial history was once controlled, restricted, and marginalized. And though laws have changed, cultural inertia remains. The result is a paradox. Earning money is harder, but you have to conform more to be considered up to standard. Money is no longer a tool for security, but becomes an admission ticket to acceptance. Images of life continue to reinforce this. Television, movies, stories that seem very ordinary portray a version of life where no one asks where the money comes from. Consumption is romanticized, and money is removed from the narrative of growing up. People can live in beautiful apartments, drink coffee every day, wear expensive clothes, and rarely face the financial consequences. Shopping is tied to identity. The impulsive spender becomes a familiar archetype. Carelessness with money is normalized to the point that if you don't participate, you feel out of sync. In this context, e-commerce appears as an always open door. The gap between wanting and having is compressed to the point of almost disappearing. The home is no longer a sanctuary from consumption. The phone in hand turns every waiting moment into a shopping opportunity. Payment technology continues to be very sophisticated, blurring the sensation of paying. When you no longer have to count cash, no longer have to sign, no longer have to type a long number sequence, the pain of paying fades and spending becomes easier than you realize. Then, buy now, pay later, schemes appear, breaking down values, anchoring the brain to lower numbers. The illusion of affordability is created by fragmenting the consequence. Each individual decision seems harmless, but cumulatively they form a tangled web of obligations. Debt is no longer a clear number, but a series of small, fragmented amounts weaving into weekly and monthly life, eroding attention and mental energy. Social media pushes it all to a higher level. Social comparison is no longer limited to a few people around us, but expands to thousands of parallel lives. What we see isn't just products, but a feeling of inadequacy. People just like us are living different lives. Living standards are constantly updated, and each update brings a new list of must-haves. Advertising no longer stands alone, but blends into entertainment, advice, and personal experiences. Everything can lead to a purchase. At this point, one thing becomes clear: there is too much to spend money on and too little quiet time to think. But external pull is only half the story, the other half lies within. The human brain doesn't operate on pure rationality but on shortcuts, emotions, and memories. When tired, bored, lonely, or insecure, spending becomes a way to self-soothe. The moment of purchase brings a sense of control, however fleeting. Memories of money from family silently shape reflexes. Some learn to avoid, some learn to spend as soon as they have it. Some associate money with anxiety, some with freedom. Self-worth gradually becomes tied to consumer capacity, and every financial decision becomes a statement about who we are. When money is seen as a relationship, it carries shame, self-reproach, and harsh self-talk. At this point, the most essential thing isn't a solution, but awakening. Understanding why you behave that way is the first step to stop punishing yourself for what happened. When the light is turned on, the parts of your personality that tend to grab the wheel begin to emerge. No need to fix them yet, just look at them directly. And from that space, a new question might arise. If I stop blaming myself, can I start my relationship with money in a different way? The space that just opened isn't an abrupt stop. It's like the moment you take a deep breath before realizing that for a long time, the wheel hasn't been in your hands. Not because of carelessness, but because the surrounding system constantly snatched control. And internally, old reflexes automatically activated at every familiar signal. When external impacts have been revealed, the gaze begins to turn inward, where seemingly very personal decisions are actually guided by silent mechanisms. People often believe they act rationally, but the brain isn't designed to optimize finances. It's designed to conserve energy and avoid pain. Cognitive shortcuts appear to help us make decisions quickly, and that very speed makes money leave our hands more easily. A divided price looks lighter. An item linked to positive emotions looks more necessary. A decision that postpones consequences is always more pleasant than immediate confrontation. The brain doesn't ask if this is good for the future. It asks, does this make me feel better right now? From here, emotional spending is no longer an abstract concept. It's a very specific action that happens after a long day, after a comparison, after a feeling of being left behind. Shopping becomes a way to self-comfort, a reward, an apology to oneself. That moment is real, that sense of relief is real, but it's short-lived. And when the afterglow fades, only the familiar question remains, why did I do that again? The cycle isn't in the act of buying, but in using buying to deal with emotions without touching the root cause. The root cause is often very distant, where financial memories are formed. What we witness growing up becomes the lens through which we view money. Some grow up in instability and learn to cling to everything. Some grow up in scarcity and learn to spend as soon as they have it. Some witness tension around money and learn to avoid it entirely. These lessons aren't written down, but they control our reflexes. When faced with a decision, the body reacts even before consciousness can speak. At a deeper level, money begins to touch identity. When self-worth is tied to image, status, or meeting standards, every spending decision becomes a subtle affirmation. I deserve this. I'm keeping up. I'm not falling behind. Money is no longer a tool. It becomes a language to speak to the world and to oneself. And when that language is distorted, the relationship with money distorts along with it. Avoiding bank statements, procrastinating checking accounts, self-punishing with harsh self-talk. All these create a loop that makes confrontation increasingly difficult. Within that loop, familiar personality parts appear at just the right time. The internal saboteurs are not loud, they are very convincing. One part says, you deserve this after everything. Another says, everything will be fine, why worry? Another whispers, it's already too late, just let it go. None of these parts are malicious. They are just trying to protect emotions in the ways they know how. But they are also the hands that grab the wheel when the road gets tough. Looking directly at these parts isn't about eliminating them, but about recognizing them. Only when you know who is speaking in your head can you prevent them from making decisions for you. And at this point, something important happens. Self-blame begins to dissolve. Not because everything is fine, but because the story has been put back in its proper place. Past bad financial decisions are no longer proof of incompetence, but the result of a very human, very common, and very understandable chain of influences. As the layer of shame thins, a new space emerges. That space has no plans yet, no systems, no numbers, but it has clarity. Clarity to see that money is not the enemy. Clarity to see that you were never taught how to befriend it. And clarity to accept that before changing behavior, you need to change your position from passive to active, from reflex to choice. This clarity doesn't bring immediate relief. It brings a different, quieter, and deeper feeling. The feeling of understanding for the first time that for years, you've been trying to fix things in the wrong place, trying to tighten discipline when the problem wasn't discipline, trying to plan when the root lay in your perspective and feelings. Money was never just money. It was always the intersection of emotions, memories, and the stories we tell ourselves. Looking back, many behaviors that once bothered us begin to take shape. Avoiding bank accounts wasn't because of laziness, but because each number brought a wave of self-judgment. Impulsive spending wasn't a lack of control, but the fastest tool to change emotional states. Procrastinating confrontation wasn't irresponsibility, but because the brain learned that confronting money meant discomfort. The brain always chooses the path of least pain, even if that path makes the future harder. At this point, a paradox emerges. The more you try to force yourself to do the right thing, the more stress increases. The more stress, the worse your decision-making ability, and the worse your decisions, the stronger the self-blame loop. This isn't a moral or willpower issue, but a misaligned feedback system. When money is tied to shame, every management tool becomes heavy, not because the tools are wrong, but because the emotional foundation isn't ready. Toxic beliefs about money often sound very familiar. That we're not good with numbers, that money always corrupts people, that we don't deserve more, that if we had money we'd become someone else. These beliefs don't appear randomly. They are assembled from experiences, from what we've seen, heard, and endured. And because they once helped us explain the world, we hold on to them even when they no longer serve us. The problem isn't having beliefs, but that beliefs operate silently. When left unnamed, they slip into the driver's seat without us realizing it. A decision is postponed because we think we'll mess it up anyway, An opportunity is missed because we fear money will change who we are. An act of self-punishment due to a feeling of unworthiness. Incorrect beliefs don't need to be proven wrong. They just need to be seen. When brought into the light, something interesting happens. Many beliefs begin to lose their weight. Not because they disappear, but because we no longer identify with them. They become stories that were once true in a certain context, not immutable truths. Confronting toxic beliefs isn't about arguing, it's about separating yourself from them. From here, the relationship with money begins to change its tone. Before, every mention of money was met with tension, a sigh, self-reproach. Now, a different way of interacting gradually forms. Interacting with money in a more positive way doesn't mean always being happy, but no longer using shame as a control tool. When money is no longer assigned morality, we stop being good or bad based on our balance. This shift is subtle, but its impact is profound. When talking to money in a neutral tone, decisions begin to become clearer. No longer trying to please anyone, no longer trying to prove anything. Financial decisions are returned to their proper place as choices between options, not judgments of character. The power to decide is gradually reclaimed, not from the outside world, but from old reflexes within. Reclaiming the power to decide means recognizing that not every emotion needs to be acted upon. You can feel tired without needing to buy, feel insecure without needing to spend, feel inferior without needing to prove it with a bank card. True power lies in the ability to separate emotion from action, not suppressing it, but allowing emotions to exist without taking the wheel. When a pause appears, choices become more conscious, not perfect choices, but your own choices in your own circumstances, with the information you have. Money is no longer something to fight against. It becomes an entity you are learning to cooperate with. You don't need to hate money to control it, nor do you need to love it to pursue it. You just need a healthy enough relationship for both sides not to hurt each other. And when that relationship softens, a new question naturally arises, no longer carrying a tone of self-reproach. If I am holding the wheel, what beliefs are whispering in my head every time I make a decision? And is it time to look directly at them? Those beliefs don't appear as slogans on a wall. They whisper. They are so familiar that we mistake them for our own thoughts. And once you've returned to the driver's seat, the next unavoidable step is to look directly at those voices. Not to refute them, nor to let them control you. This is the moment to confront toxic financial beliefs. Some beliefs sound very reasonable. That money corrupts people, that you have no talent with money, that if you had more you would lose something, that money always causes trouble so it's best not to get too involved. These beliefs don't come out of nowhere. They are pieced together from experiences, from what you've seen, heard, and endured. And because they once helped you explain the world, you keep them even when they no longer serve you. The problem isn't having beliefs, but that beliefs operate silently. When left unnamed, they slip into the driver's seat without you realizing it. A decision is delayed because you think you'll mess it up anyway. An opportunity is missed because you fear money will change who you are. An act of self-punishment due to a feeling of unworthiness. False beliefs don't need to be proven wrong. They just need to be seen. When brought into the light, something interesting happens. Many beliefs begin to lose their weight. Not because they disappear, but because you no longer identify with them. They become stories that were once true in a certain context, not immutable truths. Confronting toxic beliefs isn't arguing, it's separating yourself from them. From here, the relationship with money begins to change its tone. Previously, every mention of money meant tension, a sigh, self-reproach. Now, a different way of interacting gradually forms. Interacting with money in a more positive way doesn't mean always being joyful, but no longer using shame as a control tool. When money is no longer assigned morality, we stop being good or bad based on our balance. This change is subtle, but its impact is profound. When talking to money in a neutral tone, decisions begin to become clearer. No longer trying to please anyone, no longer trying to prove anything. Financial decisions are returned to their proper place as choices between options, not judgments of character. The power to decide is gradually reclaimed, not from the outside world, but from old reflexes within. Reclaiming the power to decide means recognizing that not every emotion needs to be acted upon. You can feel tired without needing to buy, feel insecure without needing to spend, feel inferior without needing to prove it with a bank card. True power lies in the ability to separate emotion from action, not suppressing it, but allowing emotions to exist without taking the wheel. When a pause appears, choices become more conscious, not perfect choices, but your own choices in your own circumstances with the information you have. Money is no longer something you need to fight. It becomes an entity you are learning to cooperate with. You don't need to hate money to control it, nor do you need to love it to pursue it. You just need a healthy enough relationship for both sides not to hurt each other. And when that relationship calms, a new question emerges. This time, it doesn't stem from fear or defense. If money is no longer a place to vent emotions or prove value, what do I really want it to serve? And from that question, how to spend money needs to be relearned not from scratch, but from within. When that question arises, it doesn't carry the pressure to answer immediately. It quietly opens up a new perspective. If money is no longer a place to vent emotions, nor a measure of worth, then how to spend money needs to be relearned not as a technique, but as a language. That language expresses what is important, what is worth keeping, and what can be let go. In the past, spending often occurred at two extremes, either indulging emotions or tightening in fear. Both are exhausting. Relearning how to spend doesn't mean spending less, but spending more consciously. Consciousness here isn't about controlling every penny, but about understanding why that money leaves your hand and whether you feel okay about it. The difference between conscious spending and austere spending lies in the ultimate feeling. Austere spending leaves a sense of deprivation. Emotional spending leaves emptiness. Value-based spending leaves a feeling of alignment aligned with the person you are becoming, with the life you are building, and with what you want to protect in the long term. To achieve that, a clear anchor is needed. Core values are not distant goals. They are the things that make a day meaningful. Some value freedom of time, some value security, some value experiences, connection, or the ability to care for others. When values are placed at the center, money begins to find direction. It stops chasing external standards and starts flowing to places that truly nourish life. Here, a common misconception often arises, that spending according to values is a privilege of the wealthy. In reality, the opposite is true. When resources are limited, values need to be even clearer because every choice is a trade-off. And when you know what you're trading off for, stress decreases not because you have more, but because you have fewer regrets. In this process, the why question becomes the anchor. Finding your why isn't about finding an inspiring slogan, but about identifying a personal reason strong enough not to give up when things become boring. Money management isn't glamorous. It doesn't provide a quick dopamine hit. It's a series of small, repetitive actions. Only a truly authentic reason will help sustain engagement when motivation wanes. When that reason is clear, money begins to move away from the center of life. This may sound paradoxical, but when money serves a purpose, it becomes less obsessive. You don't need to think about it all day because you know where it's going. This tranquility doesn't come from tighter control, but from better direction. From here, a subtle change occurs in daily experience. Small decisions begin to be proactive. You don't always choose the same thing, but you know why you choose. You might choose to spend on experiences because it nourishes your value of connection. You might choose not to spend because it doesn't serve anything important. Right and wrong are no longer absolute. Only appropriate or inappropriate remain. When spending has been reestablished on a foundation of values, the groundwork for a new, sustainable structure begins to emerge. Because without structure, every good intention easily dissolves into fatigue. Direction needs a system to support it, not to imprison it, but to free mental energy from repetitive decisions. When money has direction, what remains isn't added resolve, but building a good enough structure so that you don't have to resolve every day, because no one can maintain constant clarity. Life has periods of fatigue, disarray, and loss of motivation. If everything depends on willpower, the system will collapse as soon as energy drops. Therefore, the next step is to move from intention to actively and intentionally managing money. Active doesn't mean micromanaging. It means money is no longer left untouched until the end of the month. Intentional management is creating a regular rhythm where money is touched often enough not to become a worry, but not so often that it becomes an obsession. When money is integrated into life as a gentle habit, it stops being a crisis. From here, an important concept emerges. Money does not exist in isolation. It lives within an ecosystem. That ecosystem includes daily habits, living environment, work schedule, energy levels, relationships, and emotions. A good money system cannot be separated from these factors. If life's pace is too stressful, the system will break. If the environment is full of temptations, the system needs simplicity. If energy is erratic, the system must be flexible. Therefore, there is no one-size-fits-all model. A good financial ecosystem is one that fits actual life, not an idealized version. It doesn't require you to become someone else. It supports you as you are, and the most important aspect of this ecosystem is its sustainability. It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be something you can return to. In the process of building, a truth must be accepted. Motivation will wane, there will be times of boredom and times of forgetfulness. Sustaining isn't about never missing a beat, but about knowing how to return when you do. A good system doesn't punish you for a bad week. It gives you a foothold to get back up without self-blame. When the system is supportive, returning doesn't feel heavy. To achieve this, you need to identify the points where you easily go off track. It could be fatigue, stress, or life transitions. Maintaining financial habits isn't about resisting these periods, but about accounting for them from the start. Once you know what usually throws you off, the system can be designed to minimize the impact instead of denying it. Here, an important approach emerges: managing money with disciplined intuition. Intuition isn't about following fleeting emotions, it's accumulated self-knowledge. Discipline isn't rigidity, it's a clear enough structure so that intuition isn't swept away. When these two elements combine, money is managed in a way that is both flexible and stable. The interesting thing is that as the system begins to operate, money gradually recedes from its central position of stress. It becomes a normal part of life, like eating or sleeping. The goal isn't to always think about money, but to not have to think about it too much. When the system does its job well, mental space is freed up for more important things. At this conclusion, there are no victory declarations, no promises that everything will always be smooth. There is only a very clear, different feeling. The feeling that money no longer controls the rhythm of life. You are not perfect with money, but you are more stable. And that stability doesn't come from doing everything right all the time, but from having a structure kind enough to support you when you don't. Money has returned to its proper role, not the ultimate goal, but a tool to serve life. And when that tool is firmly in hand, no longer trembling, another vision begins to emerge. The vision of a long-term relationship, where money is no longer a problem to be solved, but a part of a life being lived. When money no longer makes your heart race every time you think about it, a silent shift occurs. Not because all problems have disappeared, but because their position has changed. From here, the story no longer revolves around fixing mistakes or maintaining discipline, but around standing at the center of your own money story. No stage, no audience, just enough steady presence so you aren't pushed to the sidelines every time life shakes. Becoming the protagonist in your money story isn't about an explosive feeling of power. It comes from small promises kept consistently. Once you're used to looking at money without avoidance, used to making decisions without self-punishment, a different kind of confidence forms, not loud, but enduring. That confidence isn't based on numbers, but on the experience that you can confront and continue. Money is no longer something that happens asterisk to asterisk you, but something you are asterisk leading. However, this is also the moment when old patterns can return, when work changes, when income increases, when an unexpected event occurs. Old reflexes can resurface very quickly. The risk isn't a lack of knowledge, but slipping out of the role you've reclaimed. Therefore, it's essential to identify situations that easily cause you to lose hold of the wheel, not to fear them, but to prepare. This preparation isn't rigid defense but conscious flexibility. At this point, identity becomes the anchor. When you no longer have to prove yourself to anyone, money ceases to be a performance prop. The new identity doesn't need comparison to exist. It's strengthened by living true to the system you've built, even when no one is watching. It is this consistency in small things that creates the foundation for larger decisions later. When the role is stable, a reality must be accepted. The work with money is never finished. Beliefs about money need to be continuously observed and adjusted. Each life stage opens up new fears, new temptations, and new limits. The financial comfort zone shifts accordingly. What once worried you can become familiar. What was once beyond your reach can become an option. Growth lies in recognizing these shifts and not letting them pull you back into old patterns. Expanding your comfort zone doesn't mean unconscious risk-taking. It's a gradual process of increasing your tolerance for uncertainty without losing clarity. As income increases, the challenge is no longer about enough or not enough, but about maintaining direction. Larger decisions require a higher degree of self-trust. Trust that you can deliberate, adjust, and learn from experience instead of reacting with fear or excessive excitement. At the same time, another capability needs to be nurtured: building financial resilience. This isn't just about having an emergency fund, it's the ability to stand firm when plans are disrupted. Crises don't ask permission. Unexpected expenses don't ask if you're ready. Resilience lies in the fact that one setback doesn't lead to a chain collapse. When the system is flexible enough, deviations are no longer disasters, but signals for adjustment. This resilience also has a psychological component. Knowing that you can get back on track reduces panic when things go awry. The ability to recover is more important than never stumbling. When you understand that, decisions become firmer, not because risks disappear, but because you know how to confront them from this foundation. The relationship with money moves into a different phase. Nurturing a positive relationship with money isn't always comfortable. It's the ability to be kind to yourself when you make mistakes and to maintain clarity when you succeed. Money is placed in its proper role, not deified to chase, not demonized to avoid. Just a part of life, present but not overwhelming. When money is in its rightful role, your vision begins to expand. Increasing income and building wealth no longer stems from panic or comparison. It stems from the desire to open up more life choices. Wealth here isn't defined by a common number. It's measured by the degree of freedom money provides. Freedom to choose your time, freedom to say no, freedom to build a life aligned with your values. Money has become a proper companion. Going out into life and living well with money isn't a task to be completed, but a way of life to be continued. As the story closes here, it doesn't stop. It shifts to a different rhythm. The rhythm of a purposeful life, where money is no longer a big question, but a part of the answer being lived. Every day, a new rhythm of life has formed. The most important thing is no longer adding actions, but keeping that rhythm from being broken by the illusion that you're done. Money, like any long-term relationship, does not exist in a fixed state. It changes with age, circumstances, and whatever life throws at it. Therefore, the rest of your life with money is not a period of rest, but a period of growth. This growth is most clearly seen in how you work with beliefs that were once very familiar. Beliefs about money don't disappear, they just change form. When you have little, the fear is not enough. When you have more, the fear can be losing it, making the wrong decision, or making the wrong trade-off. The financial comfort zone, therefore, does not stand still. It expands and contracts with each step forward. And if not observed, this zone can become an invisible cage, keeping you safe but not allowing for expansion. The work here isn't about breaking all limits, but about consciously expanding the comfort zone. This requires honesty with yourself. Honesty about what's causing you stress, honesty about what's making you procrastinate, honesty about the big decisions you're avoiding. When you look directly, the fear of loss loses most of its power. Not because it disappears, but because it's put in its proper place. In parallel, resilience continues to be tested. No system is immune to unexpected events. An unexpected expense, a period of reduced income, a change not in the plan. The difference between fragility and sustainability is not in avoiding these things, but in how you react when they happen. The system you've built isn't to prevent all shocks, but to absorb them. When a setback occurs, the question is no longer, where did I go wrong? But what do I need to adjust? This is the difference between self-blame and learning. Self-blame paralyses. Learning opens the way. And only with the ability to learn from deviations can the journey last a lifetime without exhaustion. At this stage, money begins to reveal a deeper role. It doesn't just support needs, but supports resilience. Financial resilience is closely linked to mental resilience. When you know you can cope, adapt, and get back on track, calmness increases. Decisions therefore slow down, become deeper, and less reactive. From that foundation, the relationship with money continues to be nurtured. Maintaining a positive relationship with money is a daily practice, not a state achieved and then forgot. There are easy days, there are difficult days. The important thing is not to return to the old extremes. Don't use money to fill emotions, don't use discipline to punish yourself. Just maintain a consistent, kind, and clear attitude. When that kindness is strong enough, a new space opens up, a space for growth. Earning more and accumulating is no longer a race but a natural consequence of stability. When no longer pulled by comparison, choices become more selective. Not every opportunity needs to be grasped. Not every invitation needs to be accepted. Money begins to serve the expansion of life choices instead of narrowing them. Wealth in this context takes on a different meaning. It's not measured by ostentatious living standards, but by the degree of freedom in decisions. Freedom to leave a situation that no longer fits, freedom to spend time on what's important, freedom to adjust your life's pace when needed. Money doesn't create these things, but it makes them possible. At this point, the journey no longer needs grand affirmations. It needs continuation. Going out into life and living well with money isn't a call to action, but a transition. What has been built isn't on paper. It's in new reflexes, in new ways of thinking, in the small decisions repeated every day. And when you've come far enough to look back, one thing becomes very clear. The journey with money has never been a quest for perfection. It's a journey for long-term companionship with yourself, with unforeseen changes, with strong periods, and with moments of vulnerability. And at this stage, the most important thing isn't to do more, but to live with what you've built. Living with money requires a very different attitude than the previous stage. No longer the excitement of starting, no longer the tension of fixing mistakes, only regularity. Regularity is something rarely praised, but it is precisely what creates freedom. When money has a clear place in life, it stops occupying your mind. It is present enough to be cared for, but not so large as to overwhelm other parts of life. Here, one thing needs to be re-emphasized. A positive relationship with money is not always comfortable. There are periods when difficult decisions must be made, times when limits must be accepted, moments when it's better to retreat than to push forward. What makes the difference is not avoiding those feelings, but not letting them pull you back into old patterns. Don't return to self-blame, don't return to avoidance, don't return to extremes. Once you're used to standing firm in those moments, money begins to reveal its truest role. Money becomes the lubricant for life choices, not the engine of life. It allows flexibility, it allows adjustment, it allows for mistakes and corrections. But it doesn't define who you are. Your identity has been fixed elsewhere, more solid, more peaceful. From this position, expanding income and accumulating wealth takes on a very different nuance. Earning more is no longer a reaction to scarcity, but a considered step in a larger picture. Not every opportunity needs to be pursued. Not every growth is valuable. When it's clear what is enough, the choice to add more becomes much more conscious. Freedom in this context isn't doing whatever you want. Freedom is the ability to choose without being forced by fear of not enough, fear of falling behind, fear of being judged. When these fears no longer hold the wheel, life opens up in a lighter way. No need to prove anything, no need to race, just follow your own rhythm. And it is that rhythm that needs to be protected, not by rigid discipline, but by attention. Attention when emotions change, attention when circumstances differ, attention when old voices try to return. This attention is not tiring. It is the result of being accustomed to presence. Once you're used to seeing, continuing to see no longer takes effort. At this conclusion, there is no new advice, no new tools, no new strategies, because everything necessary is already present. What remains is to bring them into real life, where there are no book pages, no clear structures, only days passing with all their nuances. It is there that the relationship with money is truly tested and also strengthened. The story ends not with a period, but with a transition from learning to living, from effort to naturalness, from tension to trust. Living well with money is not an achievement to be attained, but a way of existing that is maintained over time. And when that way of existing has become familiar, money is no longer a topic that needs explanation. It is simply a part of a life being lived fully, in rhythm, and with purpose. The journey this book opens doesn't end with money. It ends at a much harder to see point: how people treat themselves when no one is watching. The biggest lesson isn't how to spend smarter, but how to stop using money to escape, to prove, or to punish yourself. When money is put in its proper place, it no longer bears the burden of healing psychological wounds, nor is it forced to carry the dreams of unfamiliar standards. This book points out a thought-provoking paradox. The more you try to control money with fear, the more money controls you back. When every financial decision is wrapped in shame, comparison, and self-judgment, people no longer make decisions, they only react. And in that reactive state, no matter how many tools, plans, or pieces of advice there are, everything quickly becomes a burden. Conversely, when money is seen as a neutral part of life, neither good nor bad, neither noble nor shameful people finally have the space to choose. Another lesson, silent but profound, lies in the fact that the book doesn't promise a perfect state. There's no "I'm done" moment, no destination where every decision is correct. Instead, there's a more mature truth. The relationship with money is a process of living with it, adjusting with it, and being responsible with it. Money changes as life changes. Income, needs, risks, and limits all shift. The problem isn't avoiding every deviation, but building enough resilience so that one deviation doesn't lead to a chain collapse. The book also redefines wealth. Wealth is no longer about owning more than others, but about having enough freedom not to be forced into choices that deplete you. Freedom here doesn't have a wild, reckless connotation, but a very everyday shape. The ability to say no, the ability to slow down, the ability to adjust your course when you realize you're going astray. When money serves those abilities, it stops being the center of life, but becomes more meaningful than ever. From all these things, a series of questions naturally arise, not needing immediate answers, but difficult to ignore. Looking back at recent financial decisions, did they come from choice or reflex? How many times was money used to compensate for emotions that should have been faced differently? If one day the pressure of comparison disappeared, which expenses would naturally fall away? And if you no longer had to prove anything to anyone, what would money be used to protect in life? This book doesn't demand immediate change. It demands something harder, to stop and look directly. Look at what role money has been placed in over the years. Look at the beliefs that were once rational but may no longer be suitable. And look at the very real possibility that a different relationship with money can be built. No need for perfection, just honesty and presence.